Good evening, everyone. I call to order the special workshop of the Lakewood City Council on July 6, 2026 at 6:03 p.m. To get us kicked off, will the clerk please call the roll?
Thank you, Mayor. Councillor Black?
Here.
Councillor I. Cruz?
Here.
Councillor K. Cruz?
Here.
Councillor Furman?
Here.
Councillor LeBeer?
Here.
Councillor Lowe?
Here.
Councillor Nystrom?
Here.
Councillor Ryan?
Here.
Councillor Sinks?
Here.
Councillor Sharzai?
Here.
Mayor Strom? Mayor,
Here.
you have a quorum.
All right, thank you so much. Greetings, everyone, and welcome to tonight's meeting. This is, while bittersweet, it's a very exciting time for our City Council, and I'm really excited for our conversation this evening. So, as you can imagine, with the announcement of the retirement of our current City Manager, the City Council is now embarking on a journey to find her replacement. That would be our next person that will be performing these very critical tasks of supporting the needs of our city and also bringing us into the future. The position that we are all here to fill is not simply an administrative role, nor does it work just exist on Monday nights when the cameras are on and we're all together. The City Manager is, in fact, likely one of the most consequential hires the City Council will ever make, and maybe even one of the most consequential votes. So for those of you that might be asking why, before we get into the details of tonight's meeting, I'll just express that, as a city manager, we need someone that is a visionary, someone that is not in the abstract sense, but in the practical sense of actually seeing opportunities where others may see obstacles and building the relationships necessary that can turn those opportunities into results. That means forging partnerships that strengthen and bring investment into Lakewood. It means connecting the city, our residents, and the organizations that serve them in ways that produce lasting public good. Projects like negotiating the purchase of our new parks, the Homeless Navigation Center, and even more recently, the Emory Elementary project did not happen by accident. A great city manager also creates the culture of the organization and lifts the people around them. They mentor department directors to think beyond their programs, to operate at a strategic level of government, asking not just what we're doing, but why it matters and what comes next. So as we embark on this journey to find our next city manager for Lakewood for the years to come, what I found quickly as your mayor is that there is actually no formal rule book that dictates the required path that the City Council takes on the selection of the new city manager. On one hand, we have the traditional route, which typically looks like City Council engaging deeply once we get to the stage where we have finalists. This is the method that was used last time when we hired Ms. Hudson. And on the other hand, we have cities that will move through the process with their councils engaging differently. And in the weeks since Kathy has announced her retirement, this council has shared an appetite for being more engaged and earlier in the process. So tonight's meeting is a kickoff to the public portion of the process. As many of you may imagine, with a city of this size, we have engaged with a professional recruitment firm to conduct a national search. So our recruitment specialists have now completed the pre-work, and we're here tonight to share with our interested community members and to discuss amongst the council how we want to shape the rest of this process. So we have two primary goals for tonight. One, for our community members and our counselors to walk away with a clear understanding of what to expect throughout this process. That includes a clear timeline. While this timeline will always continue to be somewhat draft form, somewhat fluid, our intention is to make as certain as many things as we can this evening. Second goal is for council. Before we end tonight, we have a number of items that we need to decide to help our recruiter, staff, and ourselves navigate our next steps as efficiently and as transparently as possible. So with that, what we'll do is we're going to start this evening's conversation I will introduce all of you to our director, Corey Peterson. He is the director of our Chief of Human Services and Operational Services. Mr. Peterson has some items to present. He will then introduce us to our recruitment professionals who have also some items to present. We're going to go ahead because there's a lot of moving parts and things that will build upon each other. So we're going to hold all questions till the end of that formal presentation. So counselors, if you've got questions, please jot them down. And then once we're done with both of those presentations, we'll open the floor for questions. So with that, I would like to introduce Corey Peterson.
Thank you very much, Mayor. As the Mayor said, I'm the Chief of Operational Services, which covers the Human Resources Department as well. And as she alluded to, beginning in April, when we were informed that the city manager's retirement was imminent, we began the process of doing a request for proposals, or RFP, using the standard city procurement rules, given the dollar amounts that will be charged for that, to identify an executive recruiting firm that would assist in finding the next city manager. During the month of May, the selected firm, GMP Consultants, was onboarded and began their work, which culminated in the position posting on their website on the 24th of May. That position was advertised for almost an entire month. And on 28th of June, they began their initial screening process, which was kicked off immediately that day. We're out now on the cusp of the more public-facing portion of the process. We have a high number of highly qualified candidates. I'd like to, before we get into any discussion of where we are, I'd like to talk a little bit about where we're going. So I'm going to share the one slide that we have on my screen for the timeline. And I'll walk you through that really quickly. So July 6th, today, we are doing the workshop to talk about the public facing portion of this recruitment process. Tomorrow, GMP Consultants will deliver to us semifinalist packets that will be available for the council to review. I think Victoria has reached out to each of you about scheduling time so that you can come in and review those packets. By July 10th, GMP will provide some sample questions that could be used by City Council in the final interview process, but those are not limiting. You can certainly come up with your own as well. These are just to kind of get the creative juices flowing and start to think about those strategic level questions that you might want to ask during that interview. So as you're all providing your feedback to GMP based on the review packets that you've done, on the 16th, the mayor and mayor pro tem will meet with GMP Consultants to finalize those candidates based on your inputs. And then July 20th, following that, you can begin to turn in your final interview questions, and we'll develop a process for you to be able to do those so that we can not only review them, but also make sure that the same question isn't being asked 3 or 4 times. And we'll coordinate with everybody to make sure we have a good, clean set of questions to ask during the final interview process on the 7th. During the week of July 27th, we anticipating having filmed video interviews of the finalist candidates, and we'll post them on the Lakewood website so that our residents and anybody who would like to make input can do electronic comments back, and those will be compiled into a spreadsheet so that those can be shared with City Council, again, as you attend on the 7th to make your candidate interviews. And then currently scheduled tentatively is on the 6th that we will bring the candidates in to have interactions with the different departments of staff. Again, we'll use an electronic feedback form for that, for staff to be able to provide comments, which will be compiled that night in time for you to have those comments the next morning to help in your selection process. And then finally, on August 7th, the candidates will be interviewed by City Council. You'll have all the information that's been compiled from residents, from staff, and from the packets that you've been reviewed and will continue to be able to review once the finalists are public knowledge. So I will stop sharing this, and I will, at this point, turn the floor over to Malcolm Fleming, who is here from GMP Consultants, to introduce himself, introduce Jeff if he's on the line, and talk a little bit more about their observations and where we've landed on potential candidates.
Thank you, Corey. Good evening, Mayor Strom, councilors. We're happy to be here tonight. I'm Malcolm Fleming. I've been a consultant with GMP for just about 4 months now, although I've got lots of experience in local government, both here in Colorado and elsewhere. For the last 18 years, right about the time Kathy was starting as your city manager in Lakewood, I started as city manager in Louisville, served there for 10 years. I did a 1-year stint, or almost a 1-year stint, down in Manitou Springs as an interim city manager there, and helped them select their replacement for somebody that would be there on an ongoing basis. I was just an interim. And then for 7 years, I was town manager in Erie before joining GMP. Prior to that, I had 10 years in the Pacific Northwest as Bellingham, Washington's chief administrative officer and Kitsap County's county administrator. I started my local government career in New Mexico in Bernalillo County as the deputy county manager, where I served for 7 years. That's my background, and I'll turn it over to Jeff so he can also introduce himself.
Well, thank you, Malcolm, and good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm Jeff Weldon. I'm a senior consultant with GMP Consultants. I've been with the firm for just about 3 years, did a number of searches in the upper Midwest and some in Montana as well. I've got just under 30 years of experience as a city manager in 5 cities, managing those communities both in Minnesota and in South Dakota. I'm currently located in Minnesota at this point. My most recent city I retired from was city manager in Brookings, South Dakota. I was there for 10 and a half years, retired in 2018. I was also an adjunct professor at South Dakota State University, teaching undergraduate courses in public administration and state and local government. I began my public service prior to local government with the Minnesota legislature. I was a policy analyst for 5.5 years with the Minnesota State Senate, focusing on local government, taxation, and local transportation issues. So glad to be here tonight and to help you with this process. Malcolm?
Thank you, Jeff. I guess I'll start off with my excitement for this position. As a result of our recruitment efforts, we had over 40 people apply, and from all over the country, lots from Colorado and elsewhere, California, Texas, South Carolina. I think we had one from Georgia. But out of that pool, normally we would think we were in pretty good shape if we had 3, maybe 4 people that we would recommend as that you consider for finals. And at this point, we've got 10. It's an outstanding pool of candidates, really just amazing. Again, normally if we had 3 or 4 or 5, expecting maybe a couple would drop out as part of the interview process. At this point, it was a very tough decision to even limit it to that many. They include folks from around Colorado, from California, from Texas, and it's a very strong pool of folks that have really meet all of the criteria that we included in the recruitment profile. Strong fiscal experience, land use planning, council relations, community engagement, economic development. It's really an amazing pool of candidates for you, from which you can select the next city manager to lead Lakewood. Other than the calendar of events that Corey has already gone through. I'm happy to answer questions on the process. And with that, I guess I'll turn it back to either Corey or Mayor Strom.
Yeah, that's all we've got for this portion of the presentation, Mayor.
Mayor, you're muted.
Thank you. I would go ahead and open that up to council then for any questions that we may have. All right, no questions to start with. So what we do know, yep.
I wonder if we could see the slide that gives the time frame again. Could that be put up?
Yep, absolutely. Let me share that slide again. There you go.
Thanks.
Does that mean you had a question, Glenda, on the
I was just looking through it again, and whenever it went through the first time, I was wondering about July 16th when the mayor and Mayor Pro Tem meet with the consultants to finalize candidates. Does that mean that, so we heard that there are 10 considered for finalists. Does that mean that you'll just put your stamp of approval on July 16th on those 10 finalists, or will you narrow it down a little bit more?
So that's one of the questions that we have before us tonight on how many finalists we would like to see when we get to the interviewing of the finalist stages. So if you'll bear with me for a minute, we'll follow back up with that. Malcolm or Corey, did you have anything that you'd want to add to that?
Based on my understanding from Corey, you talked with your city attorney about a process where council members could submit their at least their rankings of the semifinalists based on the packet of information that we will provide for you tomorrow. That packet will include for each candidate their resume, their cover letter. The results are summarized results of the interviews with each candidate, their written responses to supplemental questions that we ask them as part of the interview process, and our internet search on background for each of those. Reviewing that information, then if council members can let me know who their top 5 or 6 candidates are, I'll compile that information and then share that with you, Mayor Strom and Mayor Pro Tem, and we will review that information, and you can use it to select the number of candidates you want to see in the final interviews.
And then the only thing I would add, Mayor Strom, would be that given I've done this with a lot of the directors so far, and normally a 50-minute interview is what you do at the executive level. So for each candidate, I would anticipate 15 to 20 minutes before the interview of reviewing all the documentation and making sure that you're fully prepared to go into that. Then the 50 minutes, and then probably 10 to 15 minutes afterwards to discuss what you just experienced with that interview. So you're looking at about an hour and a half per candidate. So that's just a rough ballpark time frame. So expectations. Does that check with you, Malcolm? Pretty close.
Yes, it does. So it means if you've got even 5 or 6 candidates, that's a very full day of interviews.
Okay, so that I think you got more than you were asking for there, but it was all information that we want to walk through tonight anyway. So basically what we're doing is starting tomorrow, and that was part of the timeline, starting tomorrow, the counselors will have the ability to see the packets of the semifinalists, all of the semifinalists. Every single counselor, including myself, will then go through those 12 or whatever packets and then give our feedback. We're going to not necessarily rank, but just pick how many, and we need to land on what that number is tonight. I would say, like, we pick 6 and we submit all 6 of our top people to GMP. Then on the 16th, GMP will come to us, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong. I'm not understanding this part clearly, but GMP comes to us with the number of finalists that we said we would like to have. Then we start a process. Now we have the finalists, and the game, it shifts again, because that's where we start to get into, now we're doing candidate interviews that are available online that our residents can submit feedback on. And so we've got us, and then I believe we're having a second interview panel as well, which maybe Malcolm, you can hit on that. And then separately, we'll talk a little bit about, when we hired Ms. Hodson, we had a couple of community receptions that gave people the ability to interact with the candidates, to learn better, and then also submit feedback through there. So there's a number of different channels, and then we will get all of that feedback when we sit down on the day that is the final interviews. Did that answer your question and then some? Okay, perfect. All right, so then we have Councilor Ryan, and then Councilor Icruz, and then Councilor Nystrom. Your hand is not able to be up, but you're next in line.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for explaining a little bit more about this process. You mentioned that we had a strong candidate pool and that it was difficult to limit it to 10. I would like to know why 10 as opposed to 12 that the mayor just mentioned, and also what criteria did you use to call that down to the 10 folks that we're going to be looking at? And then I'll have a follow-up question after that.
Sure, Councilor Rain. You will see all 12 of the semifinalists that we interviewed. We chose those based on the strength of their application, including their experience in comparable positions, the strength of their cover letter, and their responses on the supplemental questions that we asked, that they provide answers in writing. So it's really, and we looked at, we interviewed each of those 12 people in about an hour-long interview each, Jeff and I, and asked them a series of questions that were tailored to the ideal candidate traits that we listed in the profile, which were based on interviews with 10 different people. And they covered things like, why should somebody apply for the Lakewood city manager position? What challenges will the new city manager face? What are the ideal traits that you want to see in the next city manager? So we were trying to evaluate each of the candidates' capability along those lines. And you will see we prepared both a summary table and 2 or 3 paragraph summary of each candidate on how they stacked up on each of those criteria. So that's why we're recommending the 10. They were definitely the ones that rose to the top. Typically, when you do a recruitment, folks, there are break points between those that really stand out and look like they will be a good fit based on the requirements of the position, and others that don't quite measure up. And frankly, that's always a little bit of a subjective analysis, but I would say that in this case, having 10 people that we, GMP, will recommend, that's a very strong pool. And it's a reflection of the desirability of Lakewood's position, the situation you're in, the, I would say, interesting challenges that the manager will have to deal with. And so I think it's a very appealing position.
I guess my question was why 10, or sometimes I've heard 12, whatever that number is. Who decided the number, or is that just at the break point, there's only 10, the rest were not worth considering?
Well, typically we do try to come up with 10 to 15 candidates. And in this case, there did seem to be a natural break point. Jeff and I agreed, and Jeff, please chime in at any point. We agreed that those 12 were the ones that we thought were the strongest fit and worth spending time to do interviews with.
And the ideal traits, is that ones that you guys decided, or was that something that somebody gave to you as these are the ideal traits that the city of Lakewood's looking for?
Those are all based on interviews with the mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Furman, 6 or 7 staff, and we compiled the responses from all of those interviews into a list of ideal traits.
Great. And then, Mayor, maybe you're going to cover this in a bit. When I walk into the room and you guys close the door, what is it I'm allowed to bring into the room? What is it I'm allowed to bring out of the room? Can you give me a little bit more about that process, somebody? Please.
I wouldn't be the best one to give you that. I don't know.
I'll weigh in a little bit on that. So pre being designated a final candidate, these applicants are still protected from disclosure of who they are by Cora, so that it doesn't affect their current position. So that's the reason why we can't talk about any names today, because none of them have signed off. They physically have to sign a waiver to release their name to be a public candidate for the position. So you're getting an opportunity to look at these packets before we've determined the list of finalists. So you can bring anything in. We would ask that you don't take notes, take pictures, anything that could potentially be discoverable later, because the city could then be liable, if you will, for something that could potentially happen after the fact. Once the meeting on the 16th has happened and the results of all of your compilation work have been put together, and we start to develop the staff processes with the mayor and mayor pro tem, that's when GMP will reach out and get those finalists to sign off that they want to be a public candidate. And at that point, when we can talk about them by name as opposed to a general pool. Does that make sense, Malcolm?
Yes. And almost all of the candidates are currently working in other positions, and you can understand they would not want their candidacy to be public until they're really being considered a finalist. So that's why we need to maintain a strict confidentiality at this point.
Councilmember Ryan, to answer the rest of your question, you were asking what documents could you take in with you and what couldn't you? There are 2 ways to handle this preliminary review. There's 11 members on this city council that are making the decision of who needs to be moved from the preliminary stage to the final stage. You can do that in one of 2 ways. The first is you can all sit in a room and consider the documents, which means you sit there and read them while you're all sitting together in the same room. Or you can do it the way that Corey and the recruiting team has set up. And that is letting you sit with these confidential documents on your own, read them at your own pace. And then once you've read them, once you have decided whatever the number is, 5, 10, I don't know. But once you've decided on your top candidates, not ranking them, just your top candidates, then you would contact Malcolm directly and you would tell him what your top candidates would be. And in that way, you're not individually ranking anybody. You're not choosing who's best and who's worse as an individual. You're just choosing which ones that you think would be the top candidates that you're interested in moving to a finalist position. You would, because you're viewing documents that are confidential, you are being encouraged not to take notes on them or not to do anything that could cross into the confidentiality. So exactly how you're going to go about doing that, I don't know, but that's what we're trying to do, is maintain the confidentiality of these documents, which are confidential under the Colorado Open Records Act. But anyway, those are the two processes, and the one that the recruiting team and Corey are leaning toward is the one where you get to sit on your own and just take your time reading through it and make your own choices.
Councilor Ryan, did you have any other questions?
I thought the others should talk before I ask any more.
Councilor Cruz.
Thank you. Appreciate the context thus far. I'd just love to, since you all have like such a wide range of knowledge in both being in these positions and also in recruiting for them, would love to kind of know what the range of types of processes of defining these values, of getting to this point of selecting this person looks like across different communities, and sort of how our process maybe compares to some of the other ones that you all have been a part of or have seen.
Well, since Jeff's got more experience with GMP, I'll let him address that first, and then I'll follow up. So Jeff, if you would take it.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, it really is the individual preference of the governing boards as to how they want to go about this. We've seen various levels of participation from the city councils all the way down to a committee of the council making some of the decisions, and then the full council getting to the final interview process. But I think the process that you're looking at here makes a lot of sense, where everyone gets to weigh in as part of the narrowing down process, because you are going from potentially 12 candidates, 2 of which we're not recommending, but we want you to see them anyway, because we did go through the process of interviewing them, and they did make the initial cut of the 12. But even though the interviews and the subsequent information, we decided that not to include those as a recommendation. So that left us with a 10. But it is a daunting task to narrow that down to something that's much more manageable in a final interview setting. But I think the process is by and large very, very similar to what we've seen in a lot of communities as far as the narrowing down of it goes. We usually do all the preliminary work up front, do the narrowing down part, and then the council has to come in and make the final selection.
Did you have any other questions, Councilor Cruz?
Yes, I wasn't sure if Mr. Fleming was going to jump in, but if that is all, that is very helpful.
Nothing to add to that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful and understand. And then just following up on Councilor Ryan's question, can you give us a couple of examples of some of the qualities that define the strength of the applications and how you were ranking them, just for us to understand and communicate to the community?
Yes, if I can, I'll just read through what was listed in the profile. The ideal candidate traits: a collaborative and relationship-oriented leader who builds trust with council, staff, and the community; a strong communicator with the ability to engage the public and clearly explain complex issues; experienced, politically astute, highly skilled at navigating competing priorities and perspectives, expertise in financial management with the ability to balance fiscal constraints and strategic priorities, a strategic thinker with experience in economic development, land use, and long-term planning, resilient and adaptable with the ability to manage criticism and high expectations, high emotional intelligence with the ability to unify teams and to foster a positive culture, innovative and solution-oriented, willing to explore creative approaches to complex challenges, visible and engaged leader who connects with the community beyond formal settings, and a strong ethical foundation with integrity, transparency, and accountability. So we tailored our questions to address each one of those ideal traits and to ask the candidates to provide examples of specific examples of things that they have done in each of those areas. And then we compiled our responses and cross-checked to make sure we had a fair process and that we were being consistent with applicants. And you'll see the results of our work in both our matrix and our individual candidate summaries tomorrow.
Great, that's super helpful, and we can point people to that as well if anybody has any questions about what was considered. And then I just wanted to ask you one logistical question, which might be for Mr. Peterson or for the mayor. Just wanted to clarify for my own understanding, for the community reception, is that before sort of the proposed August date of our interviews, or is that proposed for after?
So there's two elements. One of them will be the online interviews that we will ask each candidate a series of questions and then post their responses for the community to view on the website and provide input. As far as a community reception, that's really up to you all if you would like to host one of those and what day of the week you'd like to host it. As it stands, the 6th and the 7th, they will be here. So it could potentially be the night of the 5th or the night of the 6th, just so we can consolidate, because we'll be doing national travel for some people and want to, get them in here then on that Wednesday, give them time to check into a hotel and then do that event before the next morning meeting for staff, a staff round robin. But that's up to you, and we're happy to accommodate however the body wants to do that.
Got it. No, that's super helpful. So one trip.
Corey, can you speak to the receptions that were done last time when we were hiring Kathy? Speak to what the invitations were that went out for those. Who's involved with that?
Yeah, obviously I wasn't here and I don't think any of us were, but what I know from talking to Kathy is they did one that was open to the community, and it was really anybody who wants to come can come and meet the candidates. It was kind of just everybody around tables, and I think it was held at Fox Hollow down in the golf course. And the second one was, I believe, a business leaders forum, which was hosted or at least put out by economic development for the people that would be invited to that one. Kind of more of a industry oriented version. So those could be two options that you might consider.
Thank you. So we have a number of things that we have to talk about scheduling tonight. And one of them is tentatively, we have the final interviews now scheduled for August 6th or 7th. So if that were to stay the same, then the receptions would be probably the nights of the 5th and the 6th if we wanted to. But that's one thing that we'll talk through. Obviously, if we end up changing the timing of the final interview date, then the receptions will adjust as well. Did you get all the answers that you were looking for? Perfect. Okay, Councillor Nystrom, then Councillor Lowe, then Councillor LeBure.
All right, thank you. I guess one question that I have is, when these packets are available to us and we go in and review them, how is our feedback going to be aggregated and by who? What does that look like?
That will be aggregated by GMP. So you'll give the feedback directly to them, and the consultants will aggregate that and provide that back to the mayor pro tem so that they can just validate, yes, and then we'll do scheduling out of that meeting and moving forward. Here are the next steps.
On our intro letter, I'll include my phone number and you can call me directly and let me know who are the 5 or 6 people that you want to see as finalists. And then I'll compile that information and share it with the mayor when we meet on the 16th.
All right. Yeah, I just want to make sure that there's some kind of, process mapped out for this, and where, I guess what I'm not clear on is if we have enough people that are on the same page on a couple of candidates, but not on others, like, what does that look like? And, because I want to make sure that there's kind of a balance in this process. And I guess you had mentioned like 6 or 7 staff members participated or interacted with the candidates, or is that yet to come? Did I misunderstand that?
Oh, I interviewed, I think it was 7 different staff people to come up with the ideal candidate traits. They were among the interviews that I conducted. So no one other than Jeff and myself have interviewed the semifinalists at this point.
Okay, so those were like representatives from different departments that provided feedback to you for that?
Yes,
assuming
that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Lowe.
Yes, thank you. And thank you. I'm really glad we're having this discussion. I think it's helpful. And obviously, I think the questions are indicative of how much interest there is from all of us in this and how important we all feel this decision is. Most of my questions are pretty straightforward and logistical for now. Just to confirm, I'm following, but in terms of what materials we'll actually see in these hard copies for the semifinalists, it sounds like in addition to a resume, we can expect a cover letter and their full responses to the supplementary questions that they were asked. Is that correct? And will there be anything else in the packets, just so we know what we're reviewing?
That's correct. That information, the supplementary responses to supplemental questions, our summary of each candidate and their strengths and weaknesses. We have a matrix showing how they all 12 of them stacked up on each of 7 criteria that are tied to those ideal candidate traits. And then I think we also have the results of our internet search so far to see if there was any controversial information out there from the past that might be of interest to council.
Thank you. One quick logistical question. I assume that the all-day I understand that we might discuss moving it, but assuming it happens on August 7th, the all-day interview with council, that would be in person, not virtual, correct?
That's correct. And one thing to keep in mind, one of the reasons we've been moving so quickly on the recruitment, we actually didn't close the review. Technically it's open, but we said we were going to do first review on the 28th. We started the semifinalist interviews literally the next day. Actually, it was 2 days later on the 30th, completed those interviews 4 days later. We're trying to move as quickly as possible, both to meet your timeline so that you get the next manager here as soon as possible, and also so that we don't lose good candidates in the process. Some folks are looking, if they're looking at this position, they're likely looking at some others. And we have had situations where good candidates will drop out because of a timeline where they get an offer and decide they don't want to wait for something that might or might not come forward. So we want to move as quickly as we can while still making sure that you have a thorough review process and are able to select who you think is the best candidate to lead Lakewood in the future.
Thank you. There was mention of counselors developing questions for the finalist round, which I think is great and certainly helpful. If I know this council, I know it's possible we'll have a number of questions. So I could imagine there just being some management in that process. I mean, I certainly will have some questions, and I also fully appreciate, like, we don't want to ask each finalist to answer like 100 questions. That would be a lot. Could we just hear a little bit? I mean, my assumption is there'll be some determination about a short list of live questions that we'll ask in the interview. And then there will be the option to follow up with some targeted, with some reasonable guardrails so that there's not 100 questions, some sort of prioritized follow-up written questions that we can see responses from, with counselors having an opportunity to provide feedback on really high priority questions that we want to see answered. Is that how you all are thinking about the sort of the finalist question process?
Yes, and I'll let Corey elaborate on this, but I'm going to supply proposed 20 or 30 questions for you to choose from among. You can revise them as you see fit. We're going to tailor them again to those ideal candidate traits because we think those are the strongest criteria to evaluate the candidates on. But we want to make sure it is tailored so that you can ask the questions you want to, respecting legal requirements and HR requirements.
Okay, thank you. I mean, I will signal that I think the opportunity to provide some sort of targeted follow-up written questions that we can sort of see in writing as part of this process alongside the actual finalist interview would be a really helpful and important process, a part of sort of the thorough vetting that I think we want to have for the finalists. And last, not to feed a fed horse, but just to return to the logistics of the semi-finalist review. I'm confident we can figure this out, but it's been mentioned that there's a real desire to keep the so I totally understand that the semifinalist packets need to be confidential. Absolutely makes sense, of course. Get that 100%. Understand there are procedures that need to be followed to keep it confidential. 100% on board with that. Are you all telling us that as part of your safeguards, you've literally not had any of these resumes or cover letters distributed over city email to protect them from the core process? Is that what you're, so it's all been done hard copy?
Correct. Yeah, I don't know any of them. Nothing has even come to us. Tomorrow, the company will release a Dropbox folder to us where we will print directly out of. Nobody on city email has seen any of the candidates to this point.
And so when Ms. McKinney-Brown was making the point about not taking notes because they could be discoverable, that's literal. You literally don't want us taking notes on like a sticky note of because my question is just, I mean, we're happy to follow the process, but like at some point we all have to be able to remember the 3 or 4 or 5 candidates that we like want to flag to the consultants, and like unless you're instructing us to like write it on our hand and then wash our hands, like how is that going to work?
What the city attorney and I were talking about earlier today, and I think this is probably a way that we can protect anonymity and still move forward, would be that we will utilize the applicant's initials and have you write down the applicant's initials and then pass those to Malcolm. Therefore, even if those were discovered at some point, CP could be anybody from Charlie Parker to Corey Peterson, and that I don't think violates any rules where we're going to inadvertently give away material that we're not supposed to be.
Okay, so if logistically that's the plan, can we email the initials to Malcolm instead of calling them? Because I'm also just thinking about the logistics of all of us having to call Malcolm and connect with them.
I'll leave that to the city attorney to determine that.
We don't have to. I don't need an answer to that today, but I just wanted to put that on the table as like logistically, it would certainly be easier if we could communicate these initials in writing rather than literally having to verbally pass them on.
And Allison and I Ms. McKinney-Brown and I were going to meet tomorrow morning and come up with the how-to list that will be taped to each of the tables where you're reviewing. So we'll definitely include that. I appreciate that feedback.
Sure. I don't need an answer to that tonight. I don't want to take us down a rabbit hole, but just flagging. Let's try to be thoughtful about the process.
Yes, sir.
Before we move on to the next question, Malcolm, maybe can you? I feel like there was more to Councilor Lowe's question about questions in general. And we want to be really clear on how many questions are we looking at potentially having creating and asking. I believe the number was around 12 questions in total, and then we're asking each candidate the same question. Can you speak to that?
Sure. I think given the amount of time for the interviews, unless you want to spend more than an hour, hour and a half on each one, limiting the number of questions to, if there are 11 of you, each of you get one, that would probably cover the various areas you want to cover in a reasonable amount of time, whether it's an hour or an hour and a half or something like that. So I would try to limit it so that each of you gets to ask a question and make sure that the questions cover all of the issues that you want to address.
Councilor LeBeer.
Thanks, Mayor. One question I had was, it's not really a question, this is more of a comment, which is I just think it'd be great to have as much of this content that can be publicly, shared or allowed in this process to actually just be put on the city's website. I do feel like it's a bit sparse on information on like deadlines and that sort of stuff. So that was just kind of a comment. Also, I appreciated all the counselors' questions. I don't have a ton of questions right now, but I just did want to make a brief comment, mostly for the public. But so before saying that, I just want to say, to Corey, I appreciate, want to thank you for, this process and for all your work that you've gone into, putting in to this recruitment. And, I know the executive recruitment process can be, challenging work. Appreciate your time, expertise. I just want to make sure to preface this with that, and also comments towards GPM. Appreciate the work that you guys have done so far. So none of the comments I want to make are intended to be any criticism of either of you guys or the or the GPM or any of you folks. But I do want to just say this respectfully for the public. I do think the city of Lakewood has missed the mark on the process here, and I think this process hasn't been developed by the city council, and we're just kind of going on a ride here. And I think it's possible that the outcomes will end up being good. But in my opinion, I think there's much to be desired thus far. So I just wanted to make that comment. I do think one only needs to do a quick Google search for local government executive recruitment to get a little bit of information on the International City and County Management Association that says that they emphasize early involvement by the governing body in establishing a search framework. In fact, they mentioned best practices typically include adopting a recruitment process in an open meeting, establishing the desired leadership profile before the recruitment begins, approving evaluation criteria before candidates are screened, clearly defining the respective roles of elected officials, consultants, and staff early on, and ensuring the governing body, not a subset of it, directs key policy decisions throughout the process, balancing candidate confidentiality with public transparency. So I just want to make that comment to our public that, I do wish and hope to see you more involved in the process and the council as well. I think we're trying to do that at the beginning of this meeting. So I just wanted to say that as a little bit of a cart before the horse piece. But beyond that, yeah, happy to just try to get some questions answered and understand how we're going to continue to try to figure out a way to move forward. And with that, I did have a little bit of questions about sort of diversity and how, GPM is looking at recruiting folks from diverse backgrounds, whether or not they've engaged organizations like the Women Leading Government organizations, or maybe the Hispanic Network, the Local Government Hispanic Network, or some organizations like that. And really how we've gone about really pushing diversity as a strategy as well in this process.
Counselor, I appreciate you asking that last question. I personally contacted 8 different city managers around Colorado whom I am familiar with to specifically emphasize those with a diverse background, both gender and other aspects. So wanted to make sure that we do have a diverse pool of applicants from which you can choose.
Great. Thank you for that. And then the other question I had, I think was just kind of leaning back on sort of what Paula said. I wasn't sure if really got to the heart of that, which is how are we weighting? Let's say council wants X, 4 or 5 members of council, or 6 or 7. I'm just really trying to understand how you evaluate a resume and how you weight sort of the content of what the body or a number of folks in the body are saying when they're looking at a respective candidate. And really what I'm saying is when you look at maybe 10 resumes or however many you have, I'm just saying, where does the weight or the emphasis go towards how you're selecting those candidates?
Well, you'll see when we release the matrix that we didn't rate one or weight one criteria higher than another. We have 7 different aspects that we were evaluating each of the candidates on, and we rated them as either outstanding, strong, competent, marginal, or poor in each of those categories. And we tried in our summary to provide examples that reflected each individual's performance on each of those criteria. So it's a broad categorization, but I think once you see that information, you'll see how we conducted the evaluations and summarized it.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We'll leave it at that for now.
Councilor Furman.
Yeah, I thank you again for everything you're doing on this. This is obviously a big process given the number of applicants. You talked about including internet information. Obviously, the focus there was a little bit about perhaps controversial issues. However, I was curious, given that a lot of these applicants are going to be coming from public positions that are similar, is there any work done to review the sort of public impression? I guess I'm trying to figure out how to frame this, not exactly internet research, but is given that a lot of the work these individuals have done is going to be reflected in both outcomes and various things that are publicly accessible. Is anything done to review sort of their records and that sort of thing available, or is that part of the internet package you talked about?
That's part of the internet package. Obviously, city managers work in a contentious, often political environment. And if I was to say there were no controversies out there, I would be lying to you, and I won't do that. Where there were situations that created some questions, we probed those with the candidates and have included some information about that in the materials that we're supplying to you.
Okay. No, that's my main question. Thank you.
Councilor Black.
Yeah, thank you so much. First, I just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to conduct this meeting with us tonight. And I know for so many of us, it's just the gravity and importance of selecting this person is really powerful. So our interest in this process and our desire to be a part of it in meaningful ways really comes from that perspective of knowing how important this role is and sort of carrying forward the future vision of our city. So we really appreciate your time and efforts in this search. I just had a couple questions as well. A quick logistics one, since you've referred to the ideal candidate traits as being in some sense sort of a guiding light for this individual, will we be provided in this packet a full list of all of those traits with not a definition, but even just a full list of all of those traits and sort of how they apply to the role?
Of course, we
just
can
so that we can look through them as we're sort of looking for the senior
profile.
finalists.
I'm sorry.
And the ideal candidate traits that were selected. Sorry, am I hard to hear?
No, we can hear you.
Okay, just will we be able to get a list of the ideal candidate traits that were selected? I know you went through them with us just now verbally, but it was just a little too quick for me to write down all of them. And it would help me as I'm sort of looking at these different semi-finalists to sort of understand this kind of guiding light that's sort of directing this vision.
Of course, we'll include, now that I think about it, we'll also include a copy of the candidate profile that we use to conduct the recruitment. It has background information on Lakewood. It includes all of the ideal candidate traits, and it talks about some of the challenges that the next city manager will likely be facing.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I apologize. I've had some tech issues in other meetings, so that's why I wanted to just make sure that I was able to be heard and understood. And then just a general process question about the ideal candidate traits. Would you say in y'all's history, this is a pretty standard way of sort of utilizing this approach to kind of guide this level of sort of executive candidate? And were the traits that sort of bubbled up to the top in line with what you've seen in other municipalities, or did they vary drastically? Just curious.
I think this is a very comparable process to what most communities go through. We do tailor the ideal traits to reflect the issues that a community is facing, whether that's public trust in the organization, fiscal issues, growth management issues. We try to make sure that we're reflecting what it is that Lakewood is dealing with and the city council's priorities in that. One other thing I'd say is we do take this work incredibly seriously. This probably will be the most consequential decision you'll make in your terms on council. And we too look at it that way. And that's why we put an 18-month guarantee on anyone we recommend. If they're not successful for at least that amount of time, we're going to be doing this recruitment again without charging you additional money for it. So we take it very seriously. We won't recommend somebody that we don't think is a good fit. And that fit is obviously you're the ones that decide ultimately who is the best fit. But we think we've looked at all the different factors that go into that, and we'll come up with somebody that you can select from confidently.
Great, thank you. And then just one final question. When we get into the room in person for the finalist interviews, in a couple of sentences, how will that process go? Will we have a rubric that we are sort of looking at? Will it be 11 people in a room sort of, vying for their best choice? Is there a way that you sort of do this to kind of consolidate sort of decision making in this body of 11 people who might not 100% be on board, at the finalist level even?
Well, having gone through this process myself 5 times, I think it's a little bit different in every community, and people want to approach it differently. We will sometimes it's a televised interview with all of the council and the community can see it at the same time. Other times it's an executive session where each individual comes in again with the full council, but it's done in an executive session. There are, as we talked about earlier, you can have a meet and greet. You can have tours that staff do for the candidates. There are lots of different ways to approach it. And I think that's one of the things we want to talk about with both the staff, who will be coordinating most of the work, and with Mayor and Mayor Pro Tem about, based on feedback from each of you to the mayor, what kind of a process do you want to see?
Thanks, that's helpful.
Yeah. Could I just add something there to Councilmember Black's question? Malcolm, one of the things that we will provide you at the final interview is a sheet that's got 2 columns on it. And one is what you identified during the interview as the candidate's strengths, and the other side of the column is what you identified as areas that needing improvement. So it's the list of your priorities, which you feel is important in this candidate, areas that you see this person brings strengths to the position, or areas that are weaknesses, and you can develop that itemized list. And that information, along with the other 10, would go into the mix for the conversation at the very end of the process. And then we can weigh them back and forth. Who else had the same observations? Who else had different observations? Sometimes that conversation is very helpful in helping you to arrive at a consensus.
Councillor Lowe.
I did already ask a question, so if any other councilors who haven't asked a question want to jump in, just wanted to make space for that for a second.
No, you're all right.
Okay. I have one question that I think builds on what Councillor Black was just saying, but Mayor, this could actually feed directly into the next part of the discussion where we talk about like what we're actually looking for in the city manager. So I'll let you decide whether it's appropriate now or later. These ideal candidate traits have come up quite a few times in this conversation. And I went back and looked again at them in the profile. And I mean, look, I think it's a great list, like collaborative, relationship-oriented leader, strong communicator, experienced, politically astute, financial management, strategic thinker, resilient, high emotional intelligence, innovative, solution-oriented, visible and engaged leader, strong ethical foundation. Great list. I personally just have one or two things that I think are really, really important that I don't see on that list, and that I going forward, as we sort of move forward from here on the semifinalist and finalist review process, I would, as one member of council, advocate adding. And I'm wondering if there's strong consensus from council about adding not like 10 more things, but one or two, if that's a discussion we can have tonight when we, sort of talk about like what we're looking for in this process. And by the way, I want to say, like, I appreciate, like, I think, the mayor and our consultants and like the city have been really are being really intentional by having this meeting and laying out the timeline and considering all the different ways that council can engage on this over the next month, which is great. I do obviously think, like, if the ideal candidate traits are literally the rubric and the criteria by which we're culling semifinalists, they're pretty important. So I really would advocate for us being able to have a discussion tonight about like whether there's anything else we want to add to that list.
Can Malcolm maybe speak to adding to that list, and what are the implications of adding something new now? Is that something that is workable?
Well, sure. I think all of the candidates, based on their experience, are going to be capable in lots of different areas. And I think going forward at this point, the key thing is making sure that the questions that you ask and the process that you ask and the criteria that you use to evaluate the information that we put together really reflects your interests. I mean, unless you want to go back and start from scratch, we're going forward. And we have, again, I think we have a very strong pool of people on a diverse group for you from which to choose. And going forward, the process should be addressing what you think are the key things that you want to see in the next city manager.
So I think if I interpreted that answer correctly, but please, Mr. Fleming, correct me if I'm wrong. I think that was a yes, that if council, if a clear majority of council would like to add one or two criteria to the ideal candidate traits, even though they weren't posted in the profile when it posted, like, we could add them as part of the formal matrix criteria that council will be considering as they review semifinalists and then finalists. I mean, if we're using it as literally a criteria matrix, the importance of that list strikes me as obvious to everyone. So I agree with you, if I understood you correctly, that the majority of council should be able to make that call.
I agree, and it would influence what questions you ask in the final interview and how you evaluate the candidates after that.
Thank you.
Councillor
Thanks, I appreciate it. And not to belabor the first part before we maybe transition in some of our other business, but just wanted to check kind of with what Councilmember Livier brought up in terms of some challenges with the process thus far. I will say, although I think this is a really helpful study session, I'm really appreciative of the work that's gone in thus far. And I'm guessing that I'm not alone in feeling like we wish that this would have happened sooner, and having some policies and procedures outlined, as you were talking about earlier, Mayor, might have maybe helped with a process that only happens so frequently in best case scenario. Are we going to be kind of talking about either tonight or at some point maybe how we aggregate our learnings into a gift for future mayors and city councils on how to run this process in a way that reflects our values?
That's not a conversation for us tonight, but yes, it will be. You know, we've talked as we've done a couple of iterations and updates to policies and procedures over the last couple of years. We've talked about making it, you know, a little bit more of a regular cadence anyway. And this is something that I have very quickly found, let's add this in and at least codify some of these beginning steps, like where council wants to start, at least consider being engaged. So that will be something, although we're not talking about that this evening, yes. Thank you for the question. Okay, with that, then yes, as Councilor Lowe had mentioned, what I thought would be really helpful, not necessarily even just as we move into the finalist interviews, but as everybody is getting ready to sit down over the next couple of, well, we'll call it a week or so, to review what who the semifinalists, and as we're thinking about it more globally, right? There's a lot that a city manager does. It's not just city council meetings on Monday nights. It's not just doing budgets in the summer. There's a lot of things that are involved. What is it that we kind of collectively would like to have each other have in mind as we're reading through these packets over the next couple of weeks, and as we're showing up with some of these conversations with our candidates moving forward as well? Malcolm has read the profile. We've gone through that a couple. That is available on the website if anybody wanted to pull up. But I wanted to open up the floor to hear from everybody about what thoughts, if you've got more thoughts, maybe, you know, if you feel like the profile captures it correctly. I don't know that we necessarily need to spend a lot of time on it, but if you've got more thoughts, I would love for us to have the opportunity to take this space and to dialogue through them so that we all have a little bit of an understanding of where everybody's coming from with this conversation. So I've got 3 hands up. We'll start with Councilor LeBure, then Councilor Black, then Councilor Furman.
Thanks, Mayor. I was just a couple quick comments. One, I was just going to support Councilman Lowe mentioned about adding to ideal candidate traits. Happy to support him on that. The other comment I was just going to make is, you know, I appreciate economic development being a key emphasis in the ideal candidate traits. And the other thing I was going to just mention was, I think Councilor Nystrom had a question or wanted to make a comment. And so I just wanted to mention that since she's not able to raise her hand. So thanks.
Councilor Nystrom.
Yeah. Okay. I think my mic's on now. Okay. Was it Corey had that slide that you showed earlier? I had one other question related to this process. Could someone put that slide back up? Okay. Yeah, I guess, you know, in terms of where we submit our input and then GMP provides, you know, the aggregated data to the mayor and mayor pro tem. Was that what I understood? That would be the next step there after we do that portion.
Correct.
So then what happens at that point? Because I guess my question is, you know, if the planets align and we all submit our input and the candidates that we want to narrow, and I guess if that doesn't happen, then we going to have another session where we talk about so that, everybody has input on that next step decision?
Your audio went out just a little bit. I think, you're asking if after we go through, everybody picks their 5 semifinalists, and then we get it back to GMP, then if it doesn't naturally come down to the amount of finalists, then what do we do? Is that what your question was? Oh, we might have lost her. Okay, we will come back to Councilor Nystrom. Oh, there you are.
Can you guys hear me now? I guess my internet's not behaving. Yeah, I guess in answer to your question, yeah, like, how do we collectively determine who are the finalists, taking that data that's been submitted from everyone?
Can I take a run at that, Mayor?
Please.
What I envision is everybody turns in their list of the top 5 or 6, whatever you determine at the end of tonight. And Malcolm and the team will develop a tally sheet that will have X person, and they'll have tick marks next to them based on how many of you had them in your top 5 or 6. And then it'll all get rank ordered as this person had 11 people that they were in their top 5. So obviously that's going to be the top candidate at that point. And then we'll work our way down. So I think if somebody were to fall out at some point, we would go down to the next set of tallies that's the highest number based on that. And I would guess that if we ended up at some point where there are people that had no tally marks against them, then we would probably have to circle back and readjust.
Okay. I guess, like I said, my concern, I guess maybe when you get to that point, maybe we need a follow-up or something. Because like I said, I hope it all works out perfectly, but if not, I want to make sure that, everybody has an opportunity to weigh in on that. Sorry, that's all I had at the.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Furman. Sorry, wait, no, you guys switched around. I think Councilor Black, then Councilor Furman. Your hands are moving.
Yeah, I just two quick comments. One, I just also wanted to echo what Councilor Lowe said, and then what Councilor LeBeer sort of advocated for, which is just this idea. I don't necessarily want to open a whole can of worms, and so much work has been done, and it's clear that there is a real commitment to this process and a real passion here. But I do just kind of want to advocate for the idea that if we are utilizing these ideal candidate traits as our sort of North Star in determining the direction of this position and who will be hiring for this role, I do think they are such important things for us to be aware of and to potentially have an opportunity to add 1 or 2 or weigh in on. I also understand and respect that could create a lot of additional work and chaos, and that's certainly not my intent here. It's just in honoring the sense that if we're going to be looking at these ideal candidate traits as the direction we want this person to head, they are very critical and important things to consider. So I just wanted to say that. Absent from that, I think one of the big things for me that I heard in the candidate traits, understanding of budget and finances and a commitment to community and an understanding of how to work with staff and navigate sticky political situations. And I think all of those are really relevant. And I think maybe what I would want to understand is sort of like, what is your vision for this city over the next, 10, 15, 20 years? Are you an advocate of environmentalism or sustainability? Are you an advocate for on the ground safety? Just sort of like, where do you want to directionally take these 155,000 residents over the long term? And what ideals, do you embody in terms of how you would vision set for an identity for our city and kind of future direction for our city? And that may already be included in a number of the things that we're going to be looking at, but I just wanted to advocate for something around that. And that's kind of all. I'll hold off on any other questions or comments now.
No, that was perfect, Councilor Black, and those are some really good contributions to consider as we're thinking about questions, including that in there. And on Malcolm had said we're good on adding ideals that we want to. We're good to talk about that right now. So everything's okay. Easy peasy. Councilor Furman.
I wanted to just jump in because I think the idea of what our decision matrix looks like, and especially because it can be for people, it can when a decision becomes difficult, a matrix like this can end up looking like a scorecard for people, and that's fine. And I'm not going to judge anyone's reasons for how they will pick individual candidates, but I did sort of want to express the idea that, again, I think we all understand the ideal version of the way that this works, right? I would assume that we work from that same place where the city manager implements the policy from the city council, right? And in principle, policies and council decisions and things like that can evolve and change. And so while I think there's a value to adding a number of things to this matrix, the one thing that I worry about is the idea of this becoming a scorecard when, I think the ideal candidate functionally has certain experience, skills, tools, and talents that allow them to take on the policy and sort of vision that is given by the council and is able to implement that, buy into it, yes, implement it though, and be able to at the same time be able to manage a large staff and implement this vision, communicate to the public, all those things. But I think there's a risk in getting too policy focused on a city manager given this role. And while I'm not about to tell anyone how to make their choices candidate wise, I get a little leery personally to try and box in, especially when I would imagine, and I could be wrong here, but I would imagine the ideal candidate is one that can survive shifts in the council body and shifts in policy. So thank you.
Mayor Strom, could I jump in for 1 second, maybe with a clarifying point?
Sure.
We're talking about the matrix and how that data will get presented to us. I think the intent, and I'm going to lean on Malcolm for a thumbs up at the end of this, but I believe the way that it's been structured to this point is they've used the ideal candidate qualifications that they've compiled through interviews with us to develop a list of 10 candidates that they have put their 18-month guarantee on. At this point, those candidates are all yours, and you can evaluate however you want. The matrix doesn't need to be changed. These are the ones that they've determined they will put their stamp on that will be successful. And out of those now, I think you can look at, from council's perspective, if you're interested in environmentalist standings, all of those pieces, that's now, I believe, up to council to determine and to choose from those 10 who they'd like to have best represent them and the city of Lakewood, the residents. Is that right?
I agree completely.
Madam Mayor, if I could, the matrix that Malin described does list those various characteristics, but the matrix is not the ideal traits that's in the profile. The ideal traits that's in the profile is not a finite list of the only criteria that you're asked to consider here on these candidates. It's a suggested list, and it's meant to give candidates a flavor of what the city of Lakewood is looking for in you as a candidate. So obviously a list of the ideal traits would go on pages ad nauseum as to what that was if you tried to make it complete and comprehensive. Obviously, you're going to want, to Councilman Lowe's concern, you're going to want somebody that's going to be a change agent. Well, change agent wasn't specifically listed in the ideal traits, but that doesn't mean it's not an important trait to consider. Obviously, you're going to want somebody that's a change agent, and there could be a question in the final interviews that's tailored to ask them to give examples of where they've been a change agent in certain situations. And that would be a very valid question to ask, and still a valid consideration and a criteria to look at.
Thank you. Councilor Lowe?
I've already talked a couple times. I'm happy to have the Mayor Pro Tem go first because she hasn't, if she'd like to.
Thank you. Thanks for presentation, all this great information, and just the real thoughtfulness from City Council. This is one of the most important things that we'll do. I appreciated what Bill was saying just around like this becoming a bit of a scorecard. And the reflection that we're all bringing our own lens to this. There are some of us that are really focused on sustainability and others who are considerate of economic vibrancy. And so I would be hesitant to start to like flesh this out further because it feels like we're over engineering this a little bit. I think the point that GMP just made about the candidate profile, like these are often sort of generic, right? Like they're not, indicative of like all of the vast things that we want to see from these candidates. And so I think that there's some buckets that we can use for this matrix that would allow us to do our tally marks in a way that aren't overly inflating like this idea that you have to check everything off this candidate list, because we know that maybe not everyone will do that. And I wanted to just touch on Paula's point. I think there's a misunderstanding around the July 16th meeting. The tally marks that the mayor and I are doing don't have greater weight than everyone else's. Like we send in our votes and they get aggregated with everyone else's. So there may be some concern that like that then gets shuffled around and like that's just not how that's going to go. So I want to make a public statement that I commit to just understanding like how the data compiled from all of us, but there's not going to be a manipulation as sort of implied that this would look different than what the consensus of the body is. I liked, Liz, what you were saying around like, what is your vision? But that to me feels like a question for the interview process because, my vision may be different than what Glenda's vision is. And so if we're using that as like part of the matrix for which to move people from semi-finalists to finalists, I get a little worried that our own personal agendas that we'd like to see for this position sort of misguide that. And so I do appreciate keeping there a level of simplicity. And I hear it. There's obviously some frustration from folks who feel that this could have gone differently or better. And I get that. But I also think it's been reinforced a number of times that there is no one way that this could be done. And I would encourage folks to trust this process and let us see what the 10 candidates are that we have before we start to like blow up these profiles and matrix and start to re-engineer it, because I do think that we're going to have a quality scope of candidates. So that's it for me.
Councilor Lowe.
Mayor, I don't know if you saw that I can't raise my hand either, and I might be in the queue maybe after Roger.
No, go for it. Go for it.
Go for it. Okay,
please.
super. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for that. And yeah, I like the comments of Jeslyn and the discussion on traits, very valid, but in my mind, that's kind of moving backwards. And I would like to move forwards and think about anything that we feel so passionate about. Let's put that in the questions instead of thinking of them as traits. And so thinking about the questions, I wrote down that maybe we'll have 12 total questions whenever we meet for an hour and a half with each candidate. And so my follow-up question then would be, so what are those questions and do we have input? How can we say, please consider this as one of the questions. And I know some community members have also said, hey, here's some questions we want to ask, for the ideal candidate. And I think we will be their voice in asking a question. And so if we could hear from the consultants on the questions and how that process will be. Thanks.
Sure. Again, we'll cull through. We've got over 100 different questions that we typically ask city manager candidates. We tailor them to the unique circumstances in each community where we're doing a recruitment. We'll look at those and try to come up with 20 or 30 that seem like they fit Lakewood's situation. I'll supply those to Corey, and then Corey can share them with you. And again, we welcome revisions, additions, deletions, and come up. I think you will have to come up, Corey will have to come up with a process that council uses to finalize the final questions that are used for the final interviews.
Great. So we'll wait to hear from Corey what those questions are, and we'll give some suggested questions back to Corey. Did I understand that right?
That's correct. And they said they would provide those questions to us by the end of this week. So you'll be getting those probably on Friday, a list of the 20 to 30, just to kind of, start to think about what those sort of questions look like, and then be able to incorporate your own thoughts or the thoughts of your constituents as you develop questions. And then I'll collect all those back and make sure none of them overlap so we don't get 4 that are on use of light rail.
And we're always looking for updates on those questions too, to make sure they're relevant for current situations. So I'm sure you'll come up with some, and we'll use them in our future recruitment.
We're happy to help. Councilor Lowe.
Yeah, 3 quick points on this discussion. First, just going off of what Glenda just raised. I never know whether we're doing Councilor Sinks or Glenda, so either, whatever people prefer. On questions, I mean, I get it. Like, yeah, 12 questions, 1 for each counselor. That sounds reasonable in a live interview. Doing more, I understand that starts to be overwhelming. I further understand that, like, we clearly it's not reasonable to have a process where people have to answer like 80 written questions or 90 written questions. But I would strongly advocate that there be written questions that are more than 12. I mean, in a city with all the complexity and difficulty, like I think that it is reasonable that counselors are going to want a couple of supplementary questions asked that we don't get to in the live interview that we would like finalists to like answer in writing for us to review. And I don't think for a job this critical that's unreasonable. So I would definitely advocate for that, number 1. Happy to come back to that. Number 2, there's been on the process for the semifinalist review, there's been mention a couple of times of the tally marks. So if I'm understanding the way the idea is this is going to work, each of us when we come out is going to sort of put tally marks next to 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 candidates and send them in to Malcolm. Okay, that sounds good, sounds reasonable. Here's my concern. If it's as simple as everyone just sort of sends in 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 people, here's what that process is going to favor, in my opinion. It will favor the sort of the common denominator consensus candidate versus a more bold visionary candidate who may be slightly more polarizing. So for instance, 5 of us might have a candidate that is our strong top preference that 3 other counselors don't like as much, right? Well, if on the other hand, there might be like a candidate that all of us are like, okay, this person's like our 4th choice. And just to be clear for folks watching at home, I haven't seen the list of finalists. I have no idea who's on this list, so I'm being completely hypothetical about this. I obviously have no idea who's in this pool. And so I suspect there might be candidates that like 9 or 10 or 11 of us all say, okay, not our top choice, but we could live with that person. And maybe that's useful data, of course, like that is good data. But I do think the process should reflect like not just who our top 4 or 5 choices are, but like which ones are each counselor's top choice, second top choice, third top choice. I think that could be easily accomplished by giving each counselor basically saying, okay, you can cast 4 votes for your top choice, 3 votes for your second, 2 votes for your third, 1 vote for your fourth, something like that. and then just having everyone like count that. I do think that I know that sounds like a detail, but I think it really will matter in terms of which candidates rise to the top. And I just want us to be thoughtful about that so that we don't select a process that kind of automatically selects for like a very down the middle consensus candidate, which may be what we want, but may not. And finally, since it has come up a couple of times, I mean, I'll just say it. Jeff actually previewed my thought on this. Justin's point is well taken. It needn't like I care less about like the scorecard or the exact list. What I do care about is the set of traits that we all collectively agree we are using to evaluate this person moving forward. And the ideal candidate traits were positioned earlier in this conversation as the list that we're using. And I think it's a good list. I think it's extremely important that skill and expertise and demonstrated efficacy around change management be added to that list. I think that is a critical part of this discussion. I think Lakewood is at an inflection point, and I think I believe that a lot of different stakeholders across the political divide on this, the vast majority of council, both like it doesn't need to be said, but I'll say it anyway. Like deeply appreciate the what Kathy Hodson has brought to this role over the last 17 years. There's a reason she's getting national awards. She's been a fabulous city manager. And as she rides off into a much justified sunset, like as we consider the future of the city, there are some changes. Like there is a desire for some things to change. I have not talked to a single person that just wants everything to stay the same. And so as we think about the organization and the direction and the policy and the staff, I do think that change management and an ability to sort of be an effective change management leader really should be, and I'm going to say it again, change management, because I feel strongly that it should be one of the key things that all of us have in our minds as we go into that room and review semifinalists. So I would advocate, whether it's formally added to the list of ideal traits or a strong consensus that that's something that we're all going to consider, I would strongly advocate for that to be one thing that we really take away from this discussion.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else want to speak to the topic of including, and mind you, okay, well, actually there's one thing I want to mention before we move on, but at this point, candidates are ours. So we are deciding what we do going forward, and we can do what we want to do with this process going forward. So incorporating this or other ideal strengths that we want to talk about is definitely still something that we can talk about. Councilor, you had mentioned that we're not ranking when we're picking. And so what that ends up looking like is if 6 people said these 4 candidates are in their top, then those are the ones that will be in the top for those people. Like, we're not doing, I'm voting on this one and then this one and then this one. We are simply just picking 6, 5 or 6, whatever we land on, and then moving forward with that.
Can I just say something brief in response, Mayor?
Yeah.
I hear you, and I'd sort of reiterate what I said. I would advocate for a process. I do think that is going to sort of cause a more like down the middle, extremely traditional, like sort of like some sort of a consensus candidate to rise to the top. And I'm sure, like, if there's a consensus candidate, of course they should be in the finalist pool. It's just that if there's a candidate that a lot of members of council think is like really strong and is their first choice, I would just hope that person would be included in the finalist round too, even if like not all, like even if only 7 or 8 counselors list them in their top 5, not like 11, if that makes sense. So I mean, I'm being hypothetical. I don't know how this is going to shake out. I do think that if the process is of the 10, we each list 5, like that doesn't necessarily reflect that for each of us, we may come to you with a list of 5, but there may be a very big delta in our opinion based on what we've seen between our number 1 and our number 5. And I'm one of 11 voices here. If folks think that I'm overcomplicating it, fine. But I did want to put this on the table.
Thank you. Councilor Cruz.
Thanks. Yeah, I think just just one point that I wanted to uplift in terms of the value, which maybe we're just speaking to how we're evaluating that might not have been reflected in the conversation yet, which understand. And I think that those don't have to be consensus pieces, but I did just want to say that I appreciated what Councilor or Jacob said earlier about kind of diversity being a part of the process a little bit stronger moving forward. And I do think that, you know, with our sign saying we're building an inclusive city, that I would hope that that's something that we're all thinking about in that room, even though that's not specifically outlined in what was put forth for candidates in terms of their perspective on their leadership. I just wanted to highlight that. And then second, I would just love to understand for the variety of options that we have in terms of how to move forward, whatever the data show, like what would be the benefits versus the drawbacks for, like, because I can imagine that maybe other cities have used more of a ranking piece or have gotten data from people otherwise. And so I would just love to understand why we're kind of submitting just a list not ranked, when I do understand sort of what Roger is saying in terms of how that may rate the data versus more of like a ranked choice system of submitting data.
I'm not sure who we need to answer that question. Is that an HR question or a legal question?
I'm not positive if that creates any legal challenges or not. And I was also wondering if maybe Malcolm had, just from other experiences, if you end up with the candidates that Councilor Lowe was talking about, doing it this way or not.
Yeah, thinking about other recruitments I've done, typically for department heads and others, we've used different approaches, sometimes ranking. I think I've experimented with ranked choice voting systems when the city council was selecting members to serve on an advisory board. To varying degrees of success, you need to have many candidates to make that system work. I think we probably have enough in this that we could apply a ranked choice voting metric to it. I don't have any problem with people submitting rank, at least if there's no legal problem with it. I'm sure I can handle a ranking system that has people 1 to 6 or something like that. That's a pretty easy spreadsheet to put together.
Ms. McKinney-Brown, would you weigh in on this?
Yes. So the only thing that I'm weighing in on is whether or not there's any perception among the members of the city council that there's pre-deciding or any of that. So by not rank choicing them, just saying these 5 are my top 5, then you're not making it. The members of the council wouldn't be saying, I really feel strongly about candidate X and these other 4 are just floating along. It's, we are going to look at 5 strong candidates. So the reason for suggesting that we not rank is to avoid any implication that the majority is pre-deciding. But I think that Mr. Fleming has experience putting algorithms on the data that come in order to do ranked choice and those types of things. So he's probably got ways to adjust for that.
I'll let the attorney decide what's pre-deciding and what's not. So we can work at whatever legal framework you think we need to operate within.
Go ahead, Roger.
Let me just say one thing. I mean, to be very clear, I'm not suggesting that we end up with a pool of finalists where they're pre-ranked, where we all say, okay, this is our number 1 choice, this is our number 2 choice. What I'm talking about is the process by which the critical process by which we winnow 10 to 3 or 4 or 2 or 5 finalists, right? Like that process matters a great deal. So to be very clear, I'm not saying that if we each like rank our own choices, that in the list that we get or that anyone gets, anyone knows who got the most votes. I mean, indeed, if we all submit like names, just, one tally sheet per candidate, like there could be a candidate that gets the most tallies, right? Like, but you weren't planning on saying this is the candidate that got the most tallies. You were going to use this as a process to get us from 10 to, a shorter list. So all I'm saying is I frankly think it would allow every member of this body to have as much input as possible in the semifinalist process if we can indicate on a list of 5 if there are candidates that we prefer within that list of 5, which I suspect many of us will, right? Like if our role is to designate 5 out of 10, that just, I mean, I'm frankly going to this meeting looking for ways to for council to have as much voice as possible, like getting to a really quality list of finalists and then picking a fantastic city manager. And I do think allowing us to reflect in our choices, not just these are our top 5, but this is our 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 would help with that. Again, you don't have to, in the final list of finalists, make clear who got the most votes.
Okay. So it sounds to me like from a legal perspective and an HR perspective, we can shift this a little bit and actually, when we're giving our feedback, rank it 1 through 5. Can I get an affirmative on that, please? Okay. All right. Thank you. So we will tweak that process a little bit from earlier conversation. Thank you, everybody. And I don't have any other hands up. As far as the discussion around ideal candidate strengths and traits, we had 2 things that were brought up. One is change management. And Councilor Cruz, I might need you to clarify yours a little bit more. You mentioned diversity, but also inclusion. So maybe it's both. Would you clarify for me that one?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I think value of diversity, equity, and inclusion in their leadership style.
Okay. All right. So, and then before we talk about these 2, were there any others that I missed? I know we had a number of questions that kind of popcorned in through that conversation. Do we have any others that anyone wanted to contribute? Councilor Ryan.
The only other one that I would contribute for discussion is creating a corporate culture that's conducive. I don't quite have all the words there, but creating a good corporate culture. And I didn't really see that there. It could be great at managing people, but studying a bad corporate culture.
Positive culture. Okay, so change management, can we just get thumbs up? We do want to have consensus one way or the other. Is that something that everybody would support?
Yeah, and I did have
a
few things to add.
Thank you. Got that one. Okay. Diversity and inclusion. Is that, please also thumbs up, thumbs down for that one. Okay, perfect. Thank you, everybody. Next one, creating a, would you say, a positive corporate culture, positive organizational culture.
I just had a question on this. Like, because there is a bullet visitable and engaged leader who connects with community beyond formal settings. And to me, that sort of gets to it. So are we just, this was my concern, is that we're going to just have a lot of wonderful ideas because we want to see the best in everything. But this feels like it is already addressed. So I didn't know, Councilor Ryan, if you could, am I missing something, or is this not address that?
No, I think that's a great point. The bullet point that you mentioned is outward facing to the community, whereas the corporate culture to me is more internal.
But it says collaborative, relationship-oriented leader who builds trust with council, staff, and the community. So there's, yeah, this is, I would hesitate to start to pile on this. If it is totally missing from this, I get that. But I think that some of this may be addressed already, but I'm happy to take the vote if we need to.
Well, we already voted on it, didn't we? Did we not vote on that one? Maybe I skipped that. Sorry, maybe your hand was up first. So, Councilor Ryan, the decision's yours. Do we want to add a new one, or do we want to vote on adding a new one, or do you feel like that captures the spirit of what you were looking for?
I'm willing to go with the consensus of folks. If folks don't want to add it, that's fine. But I do think it's an important factor. And to me, the two biggest ones are corporate culture and the vision of what the city manager is doing. So I want to make sure that it's crystal clear.
Okay, thank you. All right, please go ahead and cast your vote. I need the hands up, please. Thank you, everybody. I miss having Kathy on here to do our votes. Okay, so it looks like that fails.
No, I think
Councilor Lowe.
Sorry, Mayor, I do think that he had 6 votes.
Okay, please hold them up. I need windows to not move. Maybe my internet's going in and out too. Okay, so we have, I only see 4 yeses.
Yeah, sorry, my mistake.
Okay. Councilor Lowe.
I totally agree with you, Dave. I honestly, I'm just tripping over the word corporate. And if this is written down somewhere, I just think corporate could, I get what you're going for, but I think there are people in the community that would hear that in the wrong way. And I do actually think that like collaborative and relationship oriented leader who builds trust with council staff and the community, like covers it enough. But like, for what it's worth, I think like building a really strong, like well-managed culture of like excellence and competence is like absolutely critical.
Councilor Cruz.
Thanks. And just want to clarify too that I ended up voting against. I just reread the list. And I do think that like positive culture is in there, maybe more, it's like hidden in a sentence. So I think it's well reflected, and I think it's great for us to emphasize in our review, but I don't think it's necessary to add.
Thank you. Councilor Nystrom, did you say you had something to contribute?
Yeah, and this kind of encompasses a lot of the traits that are out there, but servant leadership to me is very important in this role, and that does tie into, the communication and the collaboration and all of those things, but that is a leadership style that I think is very important in this role.
Okay, servant leadership. How do we feel about adding servant leadership to the traits that we are looking at and discussing?
Are we voting now? Okay.
Yep. Okay. Councilor Black, we can't see your hand.
I'm so sorry. I missed the majority of this conversation because I was out of the loop. Can I abstain from this?
We're discussing whether we want to add servant leadership to the ideal traits that we are looking at when we are evaluating our candidates.
Servant leadership. Okay.
I think that passes with 6. Can
That's what I
someone
have.
please check my math?
I had
What?
6 as well.
Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for walking through this conversation. We will get those added. We do have a number of other decision points to make tonight. Before I move forward, I just want to make sure, do we have any other questions before we start to address my questions for you? Okay. So with the questions that we need to, or the items that we need to decide on this evening, one of them, the first one is on finalists. So we have, right now we have more finalists than ultimately you want to end up landing with. So our question, we need to decide how many do we want to ask for? Do we want 4? Do we want 5? Do we want more? Again, remembering that this is going to bring every single candidate out. We're spending lots of time doing lots of interviews. So we want to be really mindful about what we're asking people to do and also what we're committing in our own time with this. Do we have any thoughts on the number of candidates or candidates as finalists that we want to see? Councillor Sinks.
Yeah, Mayor, I would like to hear from the consultants and let us know their experience. In other words, has an odd number been better? Is it better to have fewer, or 3, or is 5 better, more? Could we just hear some of their thoughts on this first?
Madam Mayor, I'd be happy to jump in on that one. Thank you, Councilor, for that question. It's been our experience that generally about 4 or 5, depending on how it fits into the total schedule for the day. 4 or 5 is a good number to have. It's manageable. Really doesn't matter if it's odd or even. 3 is really not enough to give you a good choice. And then if you go over 5 into the 6 and 7, that gets to be a bit overwhelming. You really should narrow that down in your winnowing from the semifinalist down to the finalist to about 4 or 5. Now, what usually will happen is when you get down to that point, somebody's going to drop out. It's just a statistical fact. Somebody does drop out. And you never know where that's going to come from or when. In that case, it's always good to have a backup candidate that you can either bring up in the event somebody drops out, or you can decide to go with a lesser number. For example, if you decided on 5 finalists, you've invited 5 in, 1 drops out, you make the decision as to whether you want to go with a 4 or whether you want to reach down into the bucket to the next one that barely didn't make the list and bring that person up. But you need to be realistically think that just as it's statistics, chances are somebody's going to drop out. But I would say to answer your question, 4 or 5 is a good number if that fits into the daily schedule, if that helps.
Thank you. And that we can make that work. What do we say? We start at 5. If someone drops out, then we have 4. Does that feel good to everybody? I see nods, thumbs up, yay. All right. 5 finalists. Then the question becomes the reception. So we've talked about, I don't know, conversations. We could do zero receptions and have it just the community element be through the videos that people are then voting on. So there's one opportunity or one example or one choice, sorry. Then we do 1 reception and it's open to community like in general, or separately 2 receptions. And as Corey had mentioned earlier in the last go around, that was 1 community and that was 1 that was business leaders. So I would love to hear council's thoughts on how many we might want to look at having. Councilor Furman.
I actually have questions, not thoughts in general. So I don't fully understand what the receptions look like typically. I guess I'm curious about two things. Well, actually more than two, three. One, are these receptions generally multiple candidates at one go? I assume they're actually probably just one candidate, but at a time. But the other question is, what is the level of interaction that these receptions have with larger bodies of staff or the public? Can you describe to me what these receptions typically look like for this role?
Thank you for
Sure,
that
in my
question.
experience,
Back in the-
it's typically a meet and greet where all the candidates are in the same room at the same time in different locations. It's a larger room, and you have an opportunity for people to kind of go around to each candidate and ask them questions and engage with them on that level. I've also seen situations where the candidates do presentations and then have that opportunity. We typically ask the candidates to introduce themselves for the entire group, share some of their backgrounds, some of their key accomplishments, and then open it up to that, sorting into different locations within the room. And we provide comment cards for the people who attend, and they can fill out their comments on the candidates' strengths and weaknesses, or what they liked and didn't like about each candidate.
I will open up to the floor. Does anyone want to make a suggestion? Councilor LeBeer.
It's an uninformed perspective, but I love the idea of getting folks in a room and meeting the candidate. So I'm happy to support doing something like that. It sounds like something Mr. Fleming has seen a number of times. So I think that would be a cool experience.
Thank you. Councilor Beer or Lowe.
I agree. I mean, my general philosophy, just given the stakes of this, is like more engagement opportunities within reason is good. So I would definitely advocate for at least one. And I think if it can be arranged logistically, I would advocate for two. Don't have strong opinions over whether both are for the community or one's for the community and one's for maybe for a smaller subset. But I think multiple opportunities to interact with these folks while they're out here would be good. I know it's a lot of time and it's going to be grueling for all of us, but again, might be the most important decision in some ways we make. I would advocate for two.
Thank you. Okay, well, we have only one suggestion on the floor, so I just heard two. Let's go ahead and decide as far as receptions go. Do we all support doing two receptions? All right, that one was easy. Councilor Furman, did you have your hand back up?
I did. For a quick question. Is it ever advisable, and again, this is a question to Mr. Fleming, is it ever advisable to sort of, I imagine you had two of these, you had one that was, say, for the public and one that was for staff, or any kind of separation? My reason I'm asking that is because I can imagine we have a very engaged public who may intensely, show up to a public one and really maybe reduce the ability for staff to engage, which is understandable. I think this city manager would serve both bodies, but maybe it makes sense to separate them. I don't know. Just throwing that as a question, if that's something you've seen in the past.
Maybe Jeff can elaborate, but I have not seen two different forums. I have seen situations where we did one reception, and we also had opportunities for staff from different departments to engage in a different venue. And we had talked about that previously with Corey, about having a round robin where each of the candidates would go around probably on August 6th and meet with departments individually on a round robin basis to give staff an opportunity to engage with the candidates and have pro and con. In terms of an open reception, trying to limit it to any particular group, I can see that as being concerning. How are you going to stop somebody from coming if they want to come? So,
to be clear, I wasn't suggesting it would limit like from any particular group, more of the idea that the public would come in potentially a large group and prevent staff from being able to engage. It was really more of a numbers issue. And so, but it sounds like you have ways of creating multiple opportunities.
Councilman Furman, you're exactly right, because at a public reception where you've invited the public out, the media is going to be there as well. It just isn't conducive to having staff intermingle at the same time. They're just going to kind of get shut out. What Malcolm was suggesting might be better is in this conjunction with a tour or a staff luncheon with the candidates, even all 5 of them together with the department heads at a luncheon. That provides a better opportunity if you're looking for department heads or staff to have some interaction with the candidates at that point. The other thing you have to think about too with the reception is the logistics. These are generally like 5 to 7, 5:30 to 7 o'clock, 6 o'clock to 7:30, something after work hours when it's convenient for people to show up. Sometimes there's a brief program. I've seen it where the mayor might introduce the 5 finalists. The 5 finalists get 5 minutes to talk about each other, and then the rest of it is just a stand-up mingle. There's generally some light hors d'oeuvres, maybe a cash bar, but some refreshments there. But you got to think about the logistics of who are you going to invite to this. It's either going to be open with a general media announcement to the public, or do you want certain groups there, Chamber of Commerce, neighborhood associations, community stakeholders. Then there's also the invitation process that goes out for that too. So there are some behind the scene logistics that are complicated with multiple receptions, not to mention the dates.
Councilor Lowe.
I only raised my hand because I saw Glenda had a comment in the chat and she can't raise her hand. So in case she wanted to say something.
Thank you, Roger. I wonder when we had voted on 2 receptions, if we were thinking one for staff and one for business leaders, neighborhood associations, etc., or what were we? Do we have a clear idea what those 2 would be for?
I would jump in just from the staff perspective as an advocate for staff. I think that given the day period of August 6th, the day prior, I can certainly coordinate with the directors, managers, and any supervisors that we want to include and get a great interaction and feedback for you all in a way that is quickly digestible. One of the other challenges that I've seen when we did the chief's recruitment was we got feedback cards for all of the candidates, but a lot of them weren't legible and they weren't necessarily written out such that each candidate's name and then the comments, it was just a mishmash of thoughts. And that's not easy when you don't have 11 copies to pass around for each person to try and understand what that particular commenter was trying to say. So that is one of the challenges, I think, with physical written cards, is that sometimes they're not able to be interpreted and the data doesn't necessarily get incorporated into the decision. But I certainly can advocate for and will work with staff directors to take care of the staff portion of this and get you good feedback that's in a written printed format so you can read by candidate the feedback.
So just to be clear, so when we voted for 2 receptions, one was for staff and the other one was for anybody else. Do I understand that correctly?
I was going on the assumption that we were doing it as we did when we hired Kathy, and that was one was community and one was building or business people. So I guess, yeah, let's get clear on what we're doing. And it seems like staff, by then staff's home. So, and they're going to be there all day on a day. So I feel like staff, there was something different that was done for staff with Kathy, I think last time.
It was very
Corey,
similar
is
to
there
what I'm
something
talking
you-
about, where we'll take them on a tour, and part of that tour will be to sit down with the leadership from each department, let them give a 5-minute pitch, and then ask questions and provide feedback.
And that's separate from the receptions.
Correct. Yeah. I think there were
Okay.
more receptions in the past with Kathy's recruitment. I know some of them probably aren't appropriate anymore. They had them bring their spouses, force them or ask them to bring spouses. That's something obviously that we don't do anymore in the HR world. But so things can change from when Kathy's happened almost 18 years ago.
Councilor Cruz.
Thanks. Yeah, I think just from my perspective for like the idea of 2 receptions, I think that I would advocate for having one where there would be kind of, it would be open to the public and different folks could hear directly from the candidates, maybe in some kind of presentation format, and then have some opportunity to mingle, since we know there are some folks, some community leaders who don't engage online as much. And so would love for them to be able to hear from folks. And then I would advocate maybe for a second one where maybe it's not like a specific business focus like last time, but perhaps like the leader of like the registered neighborhood organizations or sustainable neighborhoods, or different like business associations, or just different kind of important institutions in our community would be invited. That might be more conducive for them to have some time than like a broad reception where a lot of people could come. That's kind of what I would argue for with 2 receptions. So, but again, that could take a lot of form. So that's my idea.
Yeah, so you're saying instead of just be business leadership, we're broadening it out to leadership of different community organizations in addition to that. Does everybody support broadening that out? Mayor Pro Tem's done with our broadening. Okay, well, it passed.
Okay.
Councilor Ken Cruz.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest thing that I was going to recommend was like a mix and mingle. So like Cruz mentioned, neighborhood association leaders, chamber of commerce, nonprofit directors. But I personally, I've seen this before in corporate, to where it is specifically an internal staff reception. It allows us as council to engage and see how these candidates engage with all levels of staff, including from leadership and non-leadership roles. So I would just, if we already agreed on the community broad and leadership, I would definitely say the internal staff reception is very important to see how these candidates engage with all staff members.
Thank you. Councilor Sinks.
Yeah, so I wasn't clear on that. Does that mean that when they meet with the staff luncheon, we just kind of shadow them? Is that what you're thinking? We just kind of shadow.
Would we even be there?
Typically,
I don't think we would be there.
Typically not. Yeah, typically not a council member.
So then we would
Ken,
zone. Oh, sorry.
So Ken, did you have something else in mind then?
Yeah, I mean, it was something that I was able to part of with a prior experience hiring a CEO, is just kind of sitting back, seeing how that engagement looked. If it's not something normally done in this environment, I think, both Malcolm and Jeff, you mentioned kind of the feedback forms and getting that. I just think it's important to see that interaction. I know that's something that I value, is how a city manager will engage with all levels of staff members.
Yeah, I think that's really important aspect of it. One way I've seen it done successfully is to have representatives from the staff, whether it's several different department directors or managers, that are tasked with soliciting feedback from the staff and then reporting out on that to council. So council has hears from multiple perspectives, different departments, internal facing, external facing, and staff individuals designated with collecting or tasked with collecting that information.
Yeah, I wasn't intending to get into the nuts and bolts, but my intent was to get a different feedback form from directors specifically, so that the directors and chiefs will be one set of feedback, and then the rest of the staff will be another set of feedback for you, so you can divvy out those by kind of rank in the organization and be able to put your weight where you feel the weight is most representative.
Does that satisfy Councillor Ken Cruz? Okay. Councillor I. Cruz.
Thanks. And I think that largely answered the question. I just want to make sure that I'm hearing it correctly, like the process, just so that we can understand it. So it sounds like the candidates will get the opportunity to liaise with the full range of staff, but then that will be communicated back to us maybe through some like grassroots ways for them to say it themselves, but also through the department heads. But they will be meeting with all of the folks. So this is essentially is happening. It just maybe at least for me was lost in translation that they would also be meeting with with folks who are not in leadership. So just want to make sure that I'm hearing that correctly.
That's correct. What I'm going to do is ask each of the departments to put together a representative selection of staff to come in to a forum where they're going to be able to get a 5-minute overview from the candidate and then talk for the rest of the 15 to 20 minutes. And then at the end of that, we will have IT establish a QR coded feedback form that goes into our city network. All the feedback can be put into there, which will all end up being dumped into an Excel spreadsheet at the end of the night. And you'll receive that the next morning to review. Prior to each of the candidates, you'll get the packet that includes that candidate's feedback.
Thank you. Councillor Ryan.
Going to Councillor Ken Cruz's comment about how being able to stand back and see how they're interacting with lower tiered folks, is there a possibility of adding a question for staff or in one of these to somehow capture that if we're not going to be there to see that for ourselves?
One thing I'll assure you, having done all except for Mr. Parker's staff will definitely give you honest feedback.
But honest feedback about how they're treating all staff members, right?
Yes, I'll incorporate something to capture that in one of the questions.
And that'd be really helpful. I will just say that's one of the things when I've hired people. That's one of the first things that we're looking for is how they're treating the receptionist, the secretary, the copy person, everybody. And I think that's really important.
Thank you, guys. All right. Okay, so last decision I think we need to make tonight. And Malcolm, Corey, please let me know if there's more feedback that you need from us in order to feel confident going out tomorrow and starting the things that we talked about. But we do need to have a conversation with regards to scheduling. Councilor LeBert recently notified me that the 7th does not work in his calendar, so I wanted to put it out to the group to see what flexibility we may have to shift the interview dates a little bit. And I know I asked you guys to hold the first couple of weeks of August, so we may not have a lot of flexibility. I don't know either on either side of it, but I wanted to bring it up while we are all here together. So that will be the easiest way of us rescheduling if there's a way for us to land on an alternate date. So I guess what I would do is, we'll give the floor, Councilor LeBure, if you can give us more information on when exactly you'll be gone, so we know what dates we want to consider as possible alternates.
Sure. Thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I won't be in the first week of August. So anytime after or before, but would work.
And when you say before, okay, so you're just you would be saying the week of July 27th or the week of August 10th, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Okay. And the 27th, I think that week doesn't look to me like a go, because we are putting up the interviews on the website and we need to give community time to be able to listen to those. So I'm not sure that week is going to work. But now that we know that it would be anything the week after, like August 10th, I would open up the floor to council to see, especially for those of you counselors, if anyone is gone that week. I think that week should still be clear. Do we have any conflicts if we were to look at the week of the 10th?
Mayor Strom, I have a conflict that week. I will be out that entire week and the following one.
Mayor, I have
okay, thank you.
Madam Mayor, we had to give these candidates during their screening interviews information about the deadlines, so we make sure their availability. We told them to hold the 6th and the 7th open.
Okay.
Because there's flight arrangements have to be made and things like that. So, and they all said that they'd make those dates open, or could be available. It'd be very difficult to switch that at this point.
Okay,
and
thank
we
you.
used those dates based on what we understood were the hold the dates
right
notices that went out more than a month ago.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So also responding to the time that we were asked to hold back in early June. And so after June or August 13th, the 12th, I wouldn't be available. I wonder if for Councilor LeBure, is there a way that we can ensure that his input is included, but it does seem challenging. I want to honor the opportunity for him to be able to participate, but these were like long-standing dates.
Maybe for our recruiters, what could it look like to give Council LeBure an option to weigh in on those finalists?
Sorry, you cut out a little bit. Are you asking what that could look like?
Yeah. For our recruiters, do you have any thoughts on what that could look like to have a counselor that's not available to be there that day be able to provide some input?
It's always a challenge with hybrid meetings, but typically it's the challenge for the person who's on the electronic end and not in the room with everybody else. But certainly providing an electronic or virtual opportunity to participate. Again, I'm not sure what Lakewood's legal requirements or charter or code requirements are for hybrid meetings, but we've been able to accommodate that in other situations, I think. Jeff, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I've gone through that same thing where the council member could not be at the interview, but he did have time at a remote location. So the schedule was the same. And then they participated and went through the round robin interviews for all of them just electronically. A little bit awkward, but it got the job done and it still allowed for the participation.
Okay, thank you. Councilor LeBure, thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's not something I can change. I planned it last year. Respectfully, I don't think June 11th being the first we heard about dates, I don't think was an adequate, amount of time. But also this is what happens. And to my first initial points about council not being engaged in the process early enough, this kind of just speaks to that. But happy to try to attend in a monitoring fashion electronically if possible. I'm not sure how possible it is, but I'm happy to look into it.
Okay. Councillor Sinks.
Thank you. So if we go with the 7th, and what I heard was that some are coming in from out of town and we wouldn't want them to fly back and forth. And we said yes to 2 receptions. Would the receptions be the night of the 6th? That is, I also heard 5:30 to 7:30, something like that. And also the night of the 7th, that evening. Should we make that an all day? Should we put that on our calendars, those 2 evenings?
If you would like to attend receptions, yes.
Okay.
Councillor Lowe?
Madam Mayor, were you looking at a reception after the interviews?
Corey, thoughts? I mean, well, no, because after the interviews that would be the 7th. That would be Friday night. I think we were talking about maybe the 5th and the 6th, the evening of the 5th, evening of the 6th.
We're talking about the evening of the 6th, but Glenda was asking about the evening of the 7th. And I don't think you want to have any reception after the last interview. You want to be in deliberations at that point.
Right. I'm sorry, I missed that part. Yes. No, the interviews are going to be all day.
Okay. So the receptions would either be 2 of them on the 6th at different times, or backing one up to the evening of the 5th, which is adding another day.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we need to decide on that tonight, Jeff, so that you can communicate an early day arrival with the candidates if we decide to do that night of the 5th before the staff visit the morning of the 6th?
Yeah, I think we'd need to want to tell them, because what the dates we told them was the 6th and the 7th. So if we want to add the 5th, the 6th, and the 7th, we should probably communicate that to them right away. Now, granted, they don't know if they're going to be a finalist until after we meet, and so nobody's making flight arrangements yet anyway.
Till the 16th, yeah.
But I think in order to help ensure their attendance and their ability to be here, I'd hate to get into a situation where, only 3 of them can make it and 2 of them can't. On the 5th.
Okay. Roger and then Glenda.
No, thank you. And just for the record, I mean, I'm so glad we're having this discussion. And I mean, I think a number of councilors have brought up like very thoughtful, constructive points, and it's been great. We've been able to talk through this. I will just, in fairness to the mayor, and just so we all have a shared understanding of the facts, remind folks that the mayor actually did send us an email on Thursday, April 2nd, in which she said, quote, as of right now, community meetings are expected to occur in late part of July, with the interviews likely in early August. If participating is important to you, I encourage you to keep your calendar flexible from mid-July through August because of the number of schedules that we'll need to be working around, including candidate travel. These dates will not be dates that are selected based on counselors' availability. Listen, we all take trips. Like, I'm traveling right now. Like, we all have trips. We all deserve to take trips. Trips get planned like 6, 7, 8 months in advance, like not calling anyone out. But I do think, in fairness to the mayor, on the question of early August, that date in particular was flagged as proactively as humanly possible. So I would really like to get input from everyone, but I do just want in fairness to the mayor, to like be clear that these dates have been in discussion for like, and by the way, there's a lot of stuff going on in early April. I wouldn't be surprised if that was not like the email all of us were focused on that week, but those dates have been in discussion for a while.
Thank you, Mayor.
Brenda?
My point was that I wondered if we should have one night of receptions, and that would be the 6th, and possibly 2 different times or just one reception. So I think having it 2 nights, the 5th, and having our consultants have to say, oh, can you come in early or whatever? Maybe we just identify the 6th that evening for one reception or 2 different time frames.
Okay. Thank you for that suggestion. Councilor Buer, did you have something on that topic or different topic?
Just back to the timeline, which is, I appreciate Councilor Lowe bringing up your first email about August. So I appreciate that. But what I mean is, this is why getting input early from folks about when they may or may not be into town could be helpful. And, you know, that information wasn't requested by any folks. So just want to mention that.
It's not it wasn't requested. I appreciate you mentioning that, but I would hope that anytime I send out an email that said, hey guys, these are the dates we're looking at, if there is a conflict, I would just ask that everybody let me know as soon as possible, so that we can plan accordingly. So
Yeah,
Glenda, back to your, thank you. Glenda, back to yours, you basically threw it on the floor. Hey, let's do 2 receptions one night. So I wanted to put that out to everybody. Are we all supportive with, like, I mean, one of them would be probably a later afternoon and then the other one would be in the evening. Are we all supportive of putting it all together on one night? Councilor Nystrom, I think I might have seen a thumbs up. Oh no, somebody did a, okay. All right, so we have 2, 3 no's. Councilor Ryan, it's hard to see which direction you're going. Okay, so yeses with 3 no's. All right, so we'll do 2 receptions one night. All right, and then it sounds to me like we're landing on keeping August 7th as is. With that, we need to also, we know we're gonna have a minimum of at least 2 executive sessions in this. So I would like to go ahead and have that discussion tonight while we all have our calendars up. So to schedule one of the executive sessions will be prior to the interviews. So it would be, I would say, the week before. And then one could be after the interviews. And that would be, the first one is just the draft contract. How does the contract look for everybody? Are we good? The second one, oh, Corey, I might need you to refresh my memory. I think that one was giving negotiators permission to negotiate certain elements of the contract based on the candidates that we then now have identified. Perfect example of, we have a salary range. We get a specific candidate. Does this salary closer to 325, or do we have lots of years of experience and we need to look at something different? So those are the elements that we would talk about in the second executive session. Okay, perfect, thank you. So the first one, I would propose that we look at the week of the 27th. Obviously, we have a city council meeting on that Monday. And I'm curious from everybody when we might be able to have the executive session that week. I do notice it looks like we have a budget and audit board meeting on Wednesday. We have also something, it looks like on Thursday night. So we could do an executive session. It looks like, well, 4 to 7. I would say probably Tuesday, or if we wanted to, before budget and audit on Wednesday. Any thoughts? Please, somebody speak out.
I could do Tuesday.
Sorry, can you repeat the date? Sorry.
It would be Tuesday, the 28th. Is anybody unable to make Tuesday, the 28th work? Councilor Nystrom, are you able to make the 28th work? And Councilor Cruz?
Yes.
Perfect. Okay, thank you. Okay. Yes is Councilor Black, you're good with the 28th? She may not hear me.
Her screen is blurry, but she is giving a thumbs up.
Okay, perfect. All right, we've got thumbs ups from everybody. So please schedule the 28th for an executive session. What time does 5 work? Do we want 6? We leave it to me. I'm going to propose 5 so we could get off and have the rest of the night. But I know that might give some people some heartburn from leaving work. So what else would you like to see?
5:30.
I actually can't make it that. I just looked at my other calendar and I cannot do the 28th.
Okay.
Sorry.
So if we were then looking at, my calendar's trying to log me out. Budget and audit. Let's see what is before, or what time that one is. Budget and audit.
5:30 start.
5:30 start. So we would need to be done by 5:30. Or we start at 7. So on the 29th, 5:30, or starting, I would say probably 4 o'clock or at 7. What do we like? Councilor Cruz.
Sorry, I'm getting mixed up on dates here, but is there a chance that Monday before our council meeting is open, or did we scratch that off for?
I think we have an LRA meeting that night before.
Okay.
Let's see. Wait, what night are we looking at?
The 27th, I think.
Yeah. Let's see. We have. Oh wait, no. The LRA meeting is on the 20th, so we could do something before the regular meeting on the 27th. How do we like that? Let's see a couple thumbs up.
Wasn't that the date we discussed? Mayor, didn't we discuss the 27th for the study session before the meeting?
The 27th is a regular business meeting. The 20th will be study session.
Okay.
Oh, I think you might be thinking of general business. We talked about the 27th for general business.
That's all right. Let's just move forward.
Okay. So we're all good with the 27th before the regular business meeting.
Oh.
Not Council Black.
Yeah, I can try to move some. Yeah, I can try to move some things around. Right now, I'm out right up until the council meeting, but I don't know if we're going to find a date that everyone can make. So I'm happy to just try and move some things around in my schedule if this works for everyone else.
Okay. Did it work for everyone else? Roger, did you? Okay. Dave, was your thumb up on the 27th? Can't see it.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Mayor, yes.
Okay. So before I move on, everyone is good with the 27th before the regular business meeting. I'm saying 5:30 p.m. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay. So that is exec session number 1. 5:30 p.m. on the 27th, and we'll be talking about the draft of the contract. So then let's move forward the week after the interviews. Now we're looking at the week of August 10th. We will have the need for another executive session. And Corey, I might actually need you to help me maybe out with the timing, or Malcolm. Like, I would envision early in the week, but maybe there needs to be some time before we do this. Do we have for the second executive session discussing the elements of the contract? Is Tuesday too early to open up discussions?
I would say the earlier you can do it, the better, especially at that stage. If you're negotiating with one candidate and can't reach terms, you want to be able to move and pivot quickly if there's a second candidate. So I would advocate for as soon as you can do it, the better.
Is it possible to
Okay.
do it before an exec session before the council meeting on the 10th?
It would be. We don't have anything before that. Right now, we only have a 7 p.m. regular business meeting. Do we like the idea of doing before the regular business meeting? All right, Councilor Nystrom. Councilor LeBure, does that work for you? August 10th, 5:30? Excellent. Okay. All right, we got that. Thank you, everyone, for getting through. We had a number of things to iron out. That was perfect. We did it. Took a little time, but we're here. With that, I will hand it over to all of our partners that are helping us with this process. Is there any more direction that you need from the City Council to go out and make your next steps?
Just a quick recap. I think we've got what we need. We'll be supplying some draft questions later in the week. We've got 2 receptions scheduled for August 6th, interviews all day on August 7th. We'll figure out ways to make sure that there's staff input, staff from different levels within the organization. We're talking about receptions for general public, and one, I think, more business community focused, but 2 different opportunities on the same night. Let's see, we're going with 5 candidates. If one drops out, we'll have only 4. That was the consensus or the decision. Jeff or Corey, have I missed anything?
The only thing else would be what time you wanted to start on this. I would recommend we start in the morning, have maybe 3 interviews in the morning, have a break for lunch, 2 interviews in the afternoon, and then leave time after the last interview for a little bit of a break, and then go right into deliberations about the interviews and work toward a decision. So maybe 9 o'clock in the morning, if that would work.
I was kind of anticipating they might show up. We're going to provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner if needed that day. So, maybe we arrive at 8 to 8:30, start to gather and look at the stuff for the first candidate, and the first interview would start at 9.
Okay, very good. Sounds good.
The only other thing I think we need to add, and this is for Malcolm, is when you send a list of the desired traits tomorrow, that at the bottom you can add in servant leadership, change management, and DEI culture as 3 of the things they want to look at for their perspective.
Correct. Yeah. Thanks for adding that.
Yep.
Anything else?
Perfect. Okay. Yes. So everybody keep your calendars available and open after 8 a.m. on August 7th. And we will get there. We will have some conversation, coalesce around the day, and then we'll welcome the first candidate in at 9 a.m. So, all right. Thank you, everyone. I know this is a lot for all of us to walk through, but it's very exciting. Bittersweet, but very exciting. And I appreciate everyone's feedback, not only tonight, but as we move forward to tonight and move forward after tonight on coming up with who's going to be the next leader of the ship USS Lakewood. So with that, we have no further business. So I will go ahead and adjourn this workshop at 8:48 p.m.